Yajong, hello. Welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time, thank you for being here. My name is Bao. I started this channel to share my life and experience being Hmong, Christian, and divorced. As a summary of what my last few videos can be summarized in, is the one mistake that I made that I would recommend everyone not doing. Now, there have been a lot of long distance relationships that have worked out, withstood the test of time and distance, and it's wonderful when you can do that. But unfortunately, mine wasn't one of those. And so I do tell my kids and I do tell young people that, care for my opinion. I would say date local. That would be my only recommendation. If you're looking for someone long term, looking for a serious relationship, dating local has a lot of benefits. You get to see them, how they interact in the community with their families or their friends. You get to see if they have friends, what kind of friends they keep, and you can know a lot about a person's character. And you get to spend time together. You get to go out and do things, and you get to build a more um, well-rounded, relationship that way because you can see each other on a more regular basis. So if I could do it all over again, I would tell my younger self to date local. Now, the locals at the time, I wasn't interested being that young. I was just totally school focused and it just wasn't a part of my plans at the time. So when he came along, everyone else local had already gotten married, had moved away. And so I felt like, I didn't have a lot of prospects. And I felt strongly encouraged to marry within the Hmong culture and people. And so I didn't branch out too far. My preferences or crushes weren't even in the equation of something long term. So I really tried to stay within that umbrella of, oh, we marry our own kind, we marry within the church, and so on and so forth. So I would say date local. It doesn't matter who you date. As long as you can build up that relationship, you get to find out whether you're compatible or not and go from there. But long distance has a lot more challenges, and if you both are willing to make it work, great for you. But just speaking from my own experience of a mistake that I would redo, I would encourage anyone to just find someone local. There's a lot of wonderful people locally that you can get to know. And in a town even as small as mine, you never run into the same person twice, if even that. So just something to consider if you're still single and looking for someone long term and for a relationship that's meaningful and that you want to get to know someone, just start local and go from there. So that uh, unsolicited PSA aside, after having the baby, escalated really quickly to getting a new house. Um, I'm going to touch upon the financial aspects of my marriage. It's not a very pretty aspect, not a pretty area that I had to live through, but so much of my marriage was wrapped up in finances that I cannot not talk about it. So we had the baby, went right into buying a new house. It wasn't a new house, but we bought our first home as a married couple. Now, I want to go back and just state that we had zero planning in the process of getting a home. We had zero budget. We had zero knowledge of a home. I was very young and dumb and naive, and as I was taught and raised in this culture, your husband will become your provider and will oversee most of these things. We were taught to, leave this to the men because this providing thing, this taking care thing falls to the men. And so we as the women were trained and raised to be of the more gentler companion, and take care of the home and the children rearing and the cooking and stuff like that. So these big things, although I could have learned them, I don't know why I didn't. It just never crossed my mind. But hindsight is a jerk, and I've had to learn a lot of these things post divorce. And so we went into buying a house with no money down, because new homeowners, you could do that, you had that option. And so we took it, and then we thought, oh wow, we're homeowners now. It's going to be, we're going towards what we were planning, and things are going to fall into place. But the one major thing that didn't come into play was the planning part of it. A home is a big investment, and there should be a lot of planning to go into that, a lot of searching and budgeting, and we didn't have any of that. And so all we knew is that we were both working. He's working for the city now. He can use his degree in the position that he was in, but something that we did not take into account is living in Minnesota was a much higher cost of living than where he was living. And so basically, what he was making and what I was making was just breaking even, basically. And so we were not ready for a home, and the cost of keeping up a home started to become a burden. So right after we got the home, I don't know why I agreed to this, but he immediately wanted upgrades and wanted new bay windows. And so we contracted a window installer to update the living room windows. It was huge. It was very expensive, and it was very pretty, but it wasn't within our means to make any upgrades at the time. And so we, looking back, should not have done that. We didn't even have any plans long term. We didn't even have any overhead budget for maintenance. And so immediately going into a home remodel was definitely not smart. That aside, we moved in, and it just wasn't working out the way we had hoped. Keeping up with the home payments started to become a struggle. There was no savings. I could not really understand this. We were both working, but there was no money coming in. Money was always going out. And I started to kind of realize that something is not working. Initially, I gave him the bookkeeping to do, right? Because money, breadwinner, this is something the man was supposedly, should take care of. And so I didn't think twice about it. He had wanted to manage the book, so I said, okay, sure. But we were falling behind. We were always falling behind, month after month. And so I decided, okay, let me take over the books, and I will monitor it, right? So I did take it over, and then I was not seeing any savings as well. Money just kept going out, nothing was coming in. Bills were due dates were coming up, and after all the tallies, there was no money to pay half the bills. And by this time, I'm just like, I don't understand. I don't know what's going on. We both make this much. The home is this much. I don't understand. So, anyways, that became a pattern of not having enough money to pay bills. This, I don't know why it didn't trouble me at the time. I don't know if it's because I just had the baby. My memories were still a huge mess. I could not remember anything from day to day. It was so bad, you guys. So bad. I couldn't remember conversations I had 5 minutes ago. And, it was frustrating for him to try to repeat himself or repeat the conversations. And I had a really hard time backtracking. And so, day to day, like all the worries that I had today, it got wiped clean when I went to sleep. And I would wake up with a blank slate. And so, unless I'm back to the same spot, then I can kind of jog my memory a little bit. But that wasn't really helpful. So I found myself in a state of mind that was not full of worry. I was not concerned at all. The thought that could that we could lose the house did not ever cross my mind, because remember, we lived in the apartment first, and from that I had he had taught me that you could pay bills late. I know, I will go over that later. Hindsight's a jerk. So, because he had kept the books initially and paying bills late, I didn't realize that at first. I just assumed that bills are being paid, but I didn't know that they were being paid late and they were being bounced on forward dated checks. I forgot what the term is, but floating checks, right? Yeah. So we move into the house, and that just kind of carried into the house. Um, and then over time, letters would come, right? Late payment letters, or debt collectors. And I could not really understand what any of this really meant. In hindsight, we were in such a bad shape that I had to go to collectors. And now, looking back and dealing with the job that I have now and seeing how people pay, I'm just like, this could have been avoided so many times. But I'm going to come back to it because the finances played a huge role in shaping our marriage and our dynamics and our interactions with one another. And it played a big role in the destruction, really, of our marriage. So the home bills were kind of falling behind, and his contract at the city was also coming up. So he decided that he would move us to his family's state, and so that his son could be closer to the grandparents. And that was his reasoning for moving us. In looking back, I think I would have appreciated if he had said, you know what, the cost of living here is a lot more than I had imagined, and I wasn't prepared for it. So we're going to move back home and try to rebuild there, closer to family where we can have some support, and we'll start over. But it wasn't explained that way to me. So he just moved us, our son and I first, to his family while he finished up the contract with the city, which was like another 3 months. I don't know why I didn't argue that it wasn't a good idea for us to split up that long, being new parents, but it didn't occur to me. It didn't occur to me. I thought that the move was welcome. I thought that I was going into a place that was going to be safe. I thought that I was going to go into a home that was going to be healthy for me and welcoming. And that was not the case. So I had to learn a really hard lesson because it just didn't pan out. I don't think it went the way that he had expected and hoped. And for me, once again, still a very new additional member to this family. I didn't know them long enough before we had moved away. And so being moved back was just something brand new again to me. I was just ready to love on them with open arms and become that nya 10K, that $10,000 worth daughter-in-law that, we're all kind of trained up to be. And I was just ready to go all out for that. I was ready to just love on this new family that I get to know before we moved away. And that didn't turn out to be the case almost immediately. And so I'm going to take a break and I will come back and we'll pick up from there. Okay? Thanks.